When I sandblasted the block, I avoided hit it with the sandblaster in the bore, in the lifters, and any machine surface inside. I also left the seal in place so the sandblaster will not damage the bushing where the seal will fit. Before I clean this block, I'm going to hone it. The cylinder bores in good shape, both of them. And I'm going to install the new rings. So I will hone them so the new rings will seat perfectly. I'm going to use a new honing stones on the drill. And now I'm ready to clean it. You really don't have to use sandblasting to clean the engine. This is the first time I do it. I rebuilt many engines in the past and I never had to do that. I only did it because this is air cooled and I need all the surfaces to be clean so the air will be more effective into cleaning this engine. After I clean it with this diesel, I blow it with air, then I use a clean diesel, clean everything and re-clean them, just in case any sand or abrasive material left here, so the diesel will take care of it, or the compressed air. This way it will not be a contaminant and cause damage after I rebuild the engine. All the engine parts are cleaned and dry. And this is the reason why I'm rebuilding this engine. I already rebuilt the starter and I soldered this wire. It was broke, the terminal was broke. I am ready to install the oil seal and the oil pump. I bought this kit. It contains all the seals, O-ring and gasket for this particular engine. When I disassemble the engine, this is supposed to have a tab to latch inside the oil pump. It was broke and it was floating inside the engine. I could reuse it just like this because this has nowhere to go once the oil pump installed in place. However, I'm going to install the new O-ring and I'm going to use silicone to help keeping this in place. And I have some JB weld left. When I repair the flywheel, I will use it little bit over here to hold this in place. the lid toward the inside. You need to make sure to install it like this. I'm going to apply a little bit silicone and then push the seal in. I'm just using a flat washer so I don't hit directly on the seal. Also make sure you don't hammer on the governor. And now I'm going to apply JB Weld because this tab broke. When I remove this part, there is a dot over here in the middle. Let me clean my hand first. I have new gloves and I cleaned this part because some JB Weld got on it. There is a dot, it line up with this dot. They're different sizes, it's keep rotating, however this is how it should go. I'm going to install the oil pump dry, so this way it seals better. If I apply oil, the oil is cold. When the engine gets hot, the oil will change thickness, viscosity and all that. So this may allow some leak. I will leave it dry, torque it to specs, and then when the oil runs through it, then it will seal any gap between the two mating surfaces. I just put little bit oil on the thread to allow me to torque it easier. And I'm going to torque it to 70 inch-pound. Spin freely. I'll wait till tomorrow till the JB Weld silicone cure, and then I'll be ready to install this part. It is the next day. The strainer is hardened and it's in place. The oil pump is still spinning. I installed the seal on the block. I pushed it all the way in. It has a drain at the other end to allow the oil to come out if there is any pressure of oil built here, so it doesn't push the seal out. This one, I pushed it all the way down until it stopped on the block. This one, there is a passageway. There is a hole down there, and if you push the seal all the way in, it will block that passage. So you need to push it about ½ inch from this edge if you have the same engine. This passage right now is open. If I blow compressed air through the hole, I will feel it in this area. You need to make sure these passages are open and not blocked. When the oil pump is spin and pressurized the oil between this bushing and the crankshaft, some of it will go out toward the oil seal, and if there is no way for this oil to escape and go back to the engine, then it may push on the seal or it may cause leak. If you have same type of engine and same type of seal and you pushed it further than you need, they should at the factory put register to where the seal should stop. However, if something similar like this, then use a small piece of wood. Make sure you don't push on the lip of the seal. Push between the lip and the outer frame of the seal and use a hammer, and you could push the seal out a little bit. Do that while you're rotating this piece of wood so you could push it equally. Make sure you do that right away before the silicone cure. I cleaned all the engine parts 2 days ago and I covered them so dust will not collect on them. I am ready to reassemble the cylinder heads. The sandblaster did excellent job into removing any debris that was stuck to the cylinder head and to the valves. I kept the spark plug installed to protect the thread from the sandblaster. I will leave it installed till I finish lapping the valve to protect the thread from the lapping compound. When I sandblasted the valves, I used this rubber hose and I inserted to here to where all the deposit was collected on the valve, and I sandblasted only this area. You need to protect this area to make sure it stays shiny and smooth so the valve will not get stuck. I don't know exactly this engine specification on the dimensions of everything. The way I go about it, when I disassemble engine, I only replace the damaged parts, the one I could see visually. You need to look for scratches, rust, heavy rust that cause corrosion to the components, a lot of wear, visual wear, then replace those parts. This engine, all the components for it very expensive, so I'm only going to replace the rings and the gasket set with the seals and all that. To inspect the valves, you need to make sure there is no groove where this set and also this shaft is smooth. I will remove this in a second, this seal, that to prevent oil from getting inside to be able to lap these valves. Also, you need to make sure these bushings are in good shape. They have no scratches or groove that will allow the piston to leak or not build the pressure for the combustion. And I separated the two cylinders head in two separate containers, so after I lap the valves, I will not mix the parts. You could also label these valves, add the marking on them of some sort so you don't get them mixed, and also you mark the cylinder head. The way I'm going to lap the cylinders head valves, I start by removing this. I left it installed so when I sandblast it, I will not damage this portion of it. Some of these cylinder heads, they don't have the valve seal installed on both stems. The new kit that I bought, it has both seals, so I will install both of them. I believe they leave this one, the exhaust, open to allow some oil to lubricate the valve. However, it's a good idea to have seal on it so it doesn't smoke. You could add some additive to the fuel and this will lubricate the valve, the stem, and the piston rings and all that. I don't have a valve lapping tool, the one you stick to the valve head to lap it. The way I always do it is as follows. I take some valve grinding compound or lapping compound and I put very thin film on the valve, on this area only, on this area where it's sealed on this part. Oh my God, that's too much. I will go grab a piece of cardboard and put the extra on it so I could use it on all 4 valves. Last time I used this one when I rebuilt the Samurai, the Suzuki Samurai engine. So the end of it was drying. And I'll apply a little bit oil on the shaft of the valves. And I use piece of rubber hose that will fit on this valve perfectly. And then lightly lap the valves into the cylinder head. Don't chuck the drill directly to the valve. This will damage the valve. It will build some rough edges on it, and this will damage the new seal. And now I will clean the valves and the cylinder head and inspect the contact area. I want to make sure 100% of both surfaces being lapped. This one look perfect. It has a fine line all the way around. Same with this part. Same here. Same on this one. And now I'm ready to clean this thoroughly, assemble it, and I'll show you how to test to make sure your lapping doesn't leak or the valve doesn't leak. I cleaned everything, hit it with compressed air. You need to make sure the valves are free. Also, they have very minimum play if you inspect them from this side. And I have these 4 new seals, 2 for this cylinder head and 2 for the other one. And push them all the way down. Make sure they square. I have 50-50 mixed solution of engine oil and this, and I'm using it as assembly lube. And then you need valve brass. The best way to test them is to fill the chamber with gasoline and inspect for any gasoline leak from the valve. And as you see, it doesn't leak. I'm going to go ahead, test the other one, and rebuild the other cylinder head off camera, and then I come right back. I label it here, here, and here. Same with this one. Regardless of what type of engine you work with, you need to make sure you install the rings correctly inside the pistons. They oriented in a specific way, some of them directional, you have to install them right. Like this one has a dot, this should be pointing up. Some of them they have grooves and all that. Usually the new ring set will include a picture on how they should be oriented inside the piston. You start by installing this one. You need to install this cut in opposite direction from the cuts of these or the opening of these rings, and you need to set these about 20 to 30 degrees off each other in the opposite direction. They will rotate and spin inside the piston, however you should start right. I have one pointing in this direction and the other one in this direction, and this ring is 180 degree opposite to them. The middle groove is deeper, so the wider ring is supposed to go in the middle. Which is this one, and I'll put the dot to the top. And I'll have this one 180 degree from the top one. The top one doesn't have marking, it's just a triangle in shape. So it doesn't matter how I install it. I built this platform to install the block on it so I could work on it easy and prevent this from falling down and break. This was very simple to make. I have another engine I'm going to rebuild in the future, similar style to this one, so this will help me to rebuild that engine as well. This is the governor rod. A small washer going first, and it should go like this. And this pin will go, there is a small hole. This gasket is stuck pretty good. I have a new one. There is no damage to this one, so I'm not going to scrape this. It's going to take time, and I don't want to waste time on this engine, especially on something that's not damaged. I will apply just a little bit silicone, and then I will install this one like it used to be. I am going to torque these to 70 inch-pound. The engine block labeled which cylinder which. This is number 1 and this is number 2. So I will install piston number 1 over here and piston number 2 over here, and they need to be installed like this. This edge, the rounded edge, and there's a flat edge. The flat edge will be against each other on both connecting rod, and the outside has this round. They will be installed exactly like this. and then use one of these tools to compress the rings. Make sure to keep guiding the connecting rod so it doesn't get scratched. This lip will be against the other one on the other connecting rod. This is 6mm bolt. I'm going to torque it to 100 inch-pound. This is a closer look. And now I'm ready to install piston number 2. I am ready to install the camshaft. The camshaft gear has a marking, and this needs to match the marking on the crankshaft. There's a marking right here. This is very important. Both of these gears, they need to be aligned or your engine will not start. You need to make sure both of these marks are lined up, and that will set the timing between the camshaft and the crankshaft. When you disassemble your engine, you need to take a note on how many spacer washer was at the camshaft gear side. On this particular engine, I have only this one, and this adjusts the play of the camshaft. And now I'm ready to clean this surface, dry it real good because oil got on it while I'm assembling all these parts. I'm also going to clean this surface and replace this O-ring. I have a new one, and then I'll apply silicone to all these surfaces, and I will sandwich the new gasket between the two surfaces, and I'll install this cover. You need to make sure to push the governor all the way against the cylinder when you install this cover on. Also, make sure your oil pump is free and rotate. You may have to put a few drops of assembly lube in it and rotate it if you're not planning to install your engine right away or get it running right away. So the inside gear in it, it will not rust. I installed the cover. I lined the gear of the governor and the oil pump until they engage, and then this cover is slid until it touched this part, and then I install all these bolts. I made sure to tie them by hand all the way. Then I use the socket and the ratchet, and I just snug them with hand, all of them. Then I torqued all of them to 216 inch-pound, and I did this one first, then the opposite one, and so on until all of them torqued to 216, and I double check them to make sure they still tied to 216 inch-pound, and they all are. And now I'm ready to proceed. Make sure after you torque all these bolts, you still be able to rotate the engine easy, to make sure the camshaft, the crankshaft, or nothing got in a bind after you torque these bolts. As I showed earlier, the reason I'm rebuilding this engine, the cylinder head was busted, and this valve and the valve bushing was damaged. This also caused one of the bush rod to get bent. I found a new kit. It has the bush rod, the rockers, and the hinging point of the rocker with the bolt. So I'm going to replace the original. Make sure this surface is completely clean and dry before you install the head gasket. I'm using a brake party cleaner to remove any oil on this surface. I need to install the drain plugs because start leaking oil. Now I'm ready to install the cylinder's head. The cylinder head's gaskets, they came with instruction and torque specification and all that. You show to torque them first to 200 inch-pound, and then final torque will be 370 inch-pound or around 31 foot-pound. These gaskets, they have marking for top. So this needs to be installed like this. The cylinder head also clean and dry. And this is label 1 for piston number 1. I lightly lubricated the thread of these bolts. I will torque them first to 200 inch-pound. And now to 370 inch-pound or about 31 foot-pound. both lifters, they all the way down, and the way to time this, there's a slot where the flywheel goes. It needs to be aligned up with the coil. So right now, piston number 1 is set for the compression stroke. I will install the rockers and these pivot points or hinging points. I'll lubricate them just a little bit. This is really not a good design. They should allow you to adjust them like regular engine. They also should put register to prevent this from doing, you know, this movement. I will adjust the rocker to hit the valve right in the center. I'm using 10mm wrench because these pivot points, they have square to allow you to move them clockwise and counterclockwise. And I'm going to torque them to 160 inch-pound. Now if I take the 10,000 inch feeler gauge, it should fit clearly over here. This is the minimum dimension you need for the valve lashes. I rotated the crankshaft 360 degrees and then I set these rockers like I did on the other one. And now I'm going to lubricate it with this assembly and motor oil mixed lube. And now I'm ready to install the valve covers. I will apply silicone to the thread of these bolts. They require very little torque, 50 inch-pound, so I don't want them to get loose. I will install the intake manifold, the carburetor, all these guards, the starter, the oil cooler. I'll do all that off camera because it will take a long time. And really, it's not important. Anybody could figure this out. I try to show the important stuff and make this video as short as possible. I will come back when I'm ready to install the electrical system. I'll show you how to install the stator, how to adjust the magnets, and how to install the flywheel. I received and installed the new stator, and I routed the cable behind this. It's come with extra cable or wires. I have to insert these into the original connector. I already tested the new stator using this multimeter. I set it on ohm and connected the multimeter leads, each one of them, to one of these leads, and I was reading about 3.5 ohms. You need to make sure you don't touch it with your hand because this will give you false reading. Also, I checked the continuity between these leads and the frame of the stator or the engine, and it's open circuit. This is how you verify the stator if it's good or bad. You need to make sure it have resistance across this and open circuit from here to the frame. Now I'm ready to install the flywheel. I position the crankshaft to the top, so when I insert the keyway, it will stay in position. I will remove these coils before I insert the flywheel. After I install the flywheel and torque it to specs, then I will install these coils and I will set the clearance between them and the magnet on the flywheel to 10,000. You need to make sure to set these correctly before you rotate the engine, because if the flywheel hit them, then this may damage these coils, and also it may break these aluminum tabs, and this will damage the block. You have to replace the block. And now I'm ready to install the flywheel. I installed the flywheel and the magnets, and I set the clearance before I rotate the flywheel. What I did, I tied these bolts with the magnets all the way up, both of them. And then I brought the magnet, lined it up with the coil, and I loosened these bolts. If you don't have feeler gauge, you could use thick paper to insert it between the magnet and the coil. Or if you have feeler gauge, it's about 10,000ths of an inch. Make sure it's clear it all the way. And then rotate it and do the other one. If you don't set this correctly, and this magnet is closer to the center of the flywheel than this magnet, then when this rotates, the magnet will hit it and it will cause all kind of damage to the engine. So be careful, make sure you set this correctly before you proceed any further. And I have a lot of compression in this engine. I already installed the spark plug. I try to prevent contaminant from get inside the engine. And really the rest of it is easy. I have to install the fan, the clutch, and all the covers to cover this engine, and the air filter and all that. Once I assemble everything, I'll come back and I'll show you the end result, and I may also do a rotation and film everything around this engine in case you're confused about any part, how it goes, so you copy what I did. You have to install the fan first. Make sure to line these tabs over here and over here. And then hold it with one bolt. And then you have to install this. After I install this cover, I will remove this bolt. And then you have to install this spacer. And be careful with this tab, don't bend it or break it. The reason for this is to clean the inside if there is a grass got stuck to this one, so this will remove it and then the fan will blow it. Tight everything with your hand and make sure everything's seated correctly before you start torquing it. I ran a new fuel lines. This one, what bolts the fuel pump, and the fuel will come from the tank to a filter and then to here, and from this port it goes to the carburetor. You need to make sure you use long bolts for this part because you're supposed to lift the engine from here and from here. I finished rebuilding this engine 2 days ago. I wrapped it with the plastic because it's been raining on and off. I did a few other repairs to the machine. There is one thing I wasn't sure about. I will unwrap this engine and I'll show you what I'm talking about. When I disassembled the engine, I discovered this cover was between the cooler and this port. So air wasn't getting to the oil cooler. And I thought they may put this by accident. So I went ahead and bolted the oil cooler like this. So cool air will go through it and this will cool the oil that's going back to the engine. I wasn't sure if this is right or wrong because I was thinking maybe if I allow more air to go through the oil cooler, this will result in less cool air to go through the engine and cool it. You need more air to cool the heads. Yesterday, I had to go to a dealer that sells equipment like this. I was shopping for a fuel line. And I checked a few machines over there. They use the exact same cooler on a newer engine and there is no air port. The cooler only bolted to the side of the engine. So maybe they put this for a reason. They try to get more air to cool the engine and they just use the air, the outside air, to cool the oil cooler. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to drill 3 small holes where in the center of this port. So this will allow little bit air to go and help cool the oil that's going back to the engine. I will show you. I will drill this and I show you how it's going to look. I drilled these holes. I took measurement, the distance from the center of this bolt down to the center of this. And I drill a hole in the center and I space 2 to the outside. This should provide just little bit air to go through this oil cooler. I also thought about building a cover to go on the top of the cooler and be bolted here and to the other side because this be bolted by 2 bolts. And this will channel the air to go back to the engine. However, this was easier. I'll try it out in the future. I may have to do that. The engine is complete. I filled it with oil. I also installed the clutch. I believe this, I need to line it up with this part. I'll have the belt around the other part and around the clutch before I lower it all the way to the machine. I also fixed the starter. This part was broke. I soldered this wire and I put some epoxy to keep this in place. And I'm going to connect it to this wire right here. As you see, this was broke. I'm going to install the engine and then I'll use my tractor to lift this machine. I have to grease a few things underneath it. Then I'll set it outside and I'll try to run the engine. This is how I lifted the engine from this point and this point. This engine stand that I built, it did excellent job. I was able to keep the engine steady while I did all the work to it. I filled the fuel tank with gas. I tried to start it. The starter will not start. And I discovered the issue was here. I tried to sand this terminal. I was able to get the engine to rotate. However, it didn't start. And I ended up replacing this terminal. Over here, I label the wire and I connect them this way. I will see if I could find 4-pin terminal or connector and I'll be able to replace these. But I think this is fine for now. The engine will fire right up. I have some issue with these handles. They need to be adjusted. And this tire over here keep getting flat. I will run it for about 3 hours, change the oil, get the engine burned in, and then I will install the deck and start mowing with it. Let me set the camera and show you how it's run. Well, I hope you enjoy this video. Thank you for watching and thank you for your support, and I'll see you later.